You are looking live at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and Steelers Training Camp 2022. Always wanted to do that. Now I've done it, and now we can get on with Training Camp Live presented by FX. Good afternoon, Steeler Nation. Mike Pursuta joined by Max Starks. We're here for Steelers Training Camp Live presented by FedEx. We'll also catch up with Craig Wolfley for the wrap-up show after practice today. But Max, before we get to anything, it's been a while. I know you spent 10 years here working and sweating. I've been coming here since the late 1980s. 1987 was my first camp. I am elated to be here. What say you?
Oh, I'm excited. I mean, this is the first time I've been to camp since my last time as a player. So for me, this was a very special drive up. I still played some of my favorite songs that I would play driving up to training camp. I got the feels. I was driving down 22 and just coming here to St. Vincent's. I know a lot has changed physically. A lot of structures have been built, but the bare bones is still there. There's still field 1 through 4 down there. The teams are working. I can see the offensive lineman off in the yonder working in the middle field. And it's one of those things, you know it's really football season when you see guys coming to St. Vincent and, of course, seeing the fans out here.
Yeah, we've got a lot to unwrap based on the first 3 days out here. Steelers working Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at St. Vincent prior to today. But part of the charm of this place has always been the history of it and the tradition associated with it. And, Max, I got to tell you, there have been 15,000 tickets distributed for today's event. The players took the field to banging drums and waving flags. Mike Tomlin's going to address the crowd. Again, I go back to the late 1980s with this, and it's still is something I find a hard time wrapping my head around when I get here, the devotion to practice. We're talking about practice. Did this make any kind of impression on you way back in camp number 1? I'm curious.
Well, absolutely. This was the place that you heard about it, right, during OTAs, during mini camp, and you're like, what's this Latrobe place? What's St. Vincent's got? Like, what is the importance of this place? Being from Florida, I had no clue, but then when you drive up and you see this small college, and you drive up, and you take your stuff to your dorm, you run your test, but then that first practice where fans come out, it's like, whoa, wait a second, I'm not in college anymore. I'm not in some main big city. Like, this is apparently a rite of passage. And to see the fans sitting on the hilltops before the press box, right, when it was just a grass field on there and fans just all over there, thousands of them, it was one of those things that was just very, very awe-inspiring. And you realize the devotion of Southwestern PA and what Western PA football really meant for people. And you got that devotion right out the gates. That first practice that fans are allowed in, you see people rushing to get their seats. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you mentioned, of course, the same field configuration, and much has changed, but much remains the same. This isn't hyperbole on my part, at least I don't think it is, but I've always likened this to kind of a Yankee Stadium light. I mean, the fields aren't just the same. That's where Chuck Noll coached. That's where Joe Green practiced. That's where Franco Harris practiced. That's where your team became a Super Bowl team. There's a lot of stuff happened here.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of history on those grounds and here, and I mean, and a lot of the buildings are still here. Bonaventure Hall is still right across the way, where those 60s and 70s Steelers all stayed in there. And then, of course, when Rooney Hall was built, we moved into there. And so you get that feel. Now, granted, I did get lost because it's my first time since I retired coming back to camp. I couldn't find the lunch hall. But other than that, I mean, everything.
Well, they changed it since the last time we were here. So
exactly. There's a transformer right in front of where the door used to be. Yeah. And it's now upstairs. It's nice, air conditioned, great lighting. But no, this is a wonderful place. And, for fans, I think when you see that number of 15,000, I think that's indicative of the fact that we haven't had training camp here for 2 years. And fans are starved for this because this is that first step on the season journey for this current team for the Steelers.
The people that have showed up here on campus today are going to see 7 shots. They're going to see a couple of special teams period, pass under pressures on the menu, also special category third down drill, 7-on-7, and then a team drill to wrap things up today. And I mentioned at the outset it has been pretty interesting so far because, hey, this just in, Ben Roethlisberger's not playing here anymore. The quarterback story is front and center. That's the headline news. There are other stories.
Oh,
and
well.
Mike Tomlin made a point of addressing the media prior to the first practice, saying, basically, don't grade the quarterbacks on every throw. The depth chart is not going to change every day, and it hasn't changed so far. We have seen Mitch Trubisky, followed by Mason Rudolph, followed by Kenny Pickett. And I'm wondering, Max, what were your impressions when the roster was set, and where do you think this is eventually headed?
Well, I mean, I look at this and I say, okay, this is the starting point, right? You lose Ben Roethlisberger to retirement. Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, happens. Now you have to fill two voids on this roster. You need to have an established veteran, plus you need to have a young talent waiting in the wings. Well, you go out, you get Mitch Trubisky in free agency. You bring him from Buffalo, and you tell him, hey, you're going to compete for a starting job. It's not going to be yours, but you're going to compete for it. And then you go and you draft Kenny Pickett in the first round, who, by the way, only has to move exactly, what is that, about 10 yards to the left from his cozy confines of Pitt's football offices. And
different parking space, I think.
Well, yeah, he's actually allowed to park, right? He's allowed to park instead of ride the bus over. But I think this is how I vision it going through the first preseason game. Let guys earn their merits. Now, I know we'll have pads on Monday, but this is the way it's going to be. You get the elder statesman, you get the guy who's the established veteran here of this current unit, and then you got the young gun behind them. Ben Roethlisberger started as a fourth-string quarterback when he came to camp when we were here in 2004, and you see what that led to. So I think it's just a starting point. Like Coach Tomlin said, I don't think this is the final, but don't expect us to just mix it up day after day. There's other battles that get that, but this is not one of those, and this one has to be a stabilizing decision.
Yeah, the fourth guy there, number 5, Chris Oladukum, the 7th-round pick, is number 4. We haven't seen him take a rep yet in practice with the offense. You mentioned Ben Roethlisberger. You guys showed up together, and he didn't come in on a white horse trampling over a red carpet. Yeah, he was the number 1 pick and a lot of hype, but he wasn't supposed to be playing as quickly as he was. What do you recall from the way all that unfolded?
Well, I remember it because Charlie injures his collarbone in practice, and that's how Ben makes his first move, right, from 4th to 3rd. And then after that, I just remember in practice, Ben started showing some signs. So we get through the first preseason game, and then they make that first adjustment, say, hey, let's put this guy behind Tommy for a couple of preseason games to see what he can do with part of the 1s and most of the 2s. Then, of course, it's not until week 2 of the season in Baltimore, Tommy Maddox goes down, a young Ben Roethlisberger's dressing, and he gets forced into action. And he's very Brett Favre-ish / Tasmanian Devil in that game, and almost brings us back against that really good Ravens defense. But then he starts the next week in Miami in a hurricane, and then that just showed that Hurricane Ben was on a tear now for 18 years. He got that starting job, won 14 games, went to the AFC Championship game, and never gave that job up to a competition until he decided to retire last year.
One of the things I remember about that camp, Max, again, Roethlisberger, pretty hyped guy, drafted as high as he was and playing the position that he did. But he did have a slow start, and yet he was able to get noticed even before the injuries started piling up. I remember one play in particular. I'm curious if you'll recall this after I mention it.
Okay.
It was an 11-on-11 period, and it was a fake pitch left, bootleg right, and then he got out on the wing and threw on the run to a kid named Zamir Cobb, who I think was a rookie free agent from Temple.
Yes.
And Cobb makes this diving catch. The ball's right on the money. He catches it. Big play right down the seam. And I remember thinking, well, the other quarterbacks can't do that. And our colleague Bob Labriola was standing next to Tunch Ilkin at the time on another part of the practice field, and Tunch turned to Bob and said, Brett Favre. And where I'm going with this is it's not necessarily whether you're working with the 1s or not. It's what you're doing with the opportunities you get that decide your fate, correct?
Absolutely. I completely, and I actually remember that because the play was called boot at 9, and I can't remember what exactly. I was actually at right tackle on that play.
And because you weren't starting right away.
No, I wasn't starting.
Zamir Cobb wasn't starting, and that's why Ben was working with you guys.
Yeah.
But he still found a way to say, hey, look at me.
Yeah, it was our rookie group. In fact, who was snapping to him was Drew Kaler. Drew Kaler from Cal.
I had forgotten Drew
Kaler.
Kaler.
Yeah. And Kranchik was in next to me, and Josh Parrish. I mean, our whole rookie crew, we were all in on that one. And Zamir, one of my good friends still to this day, he still works with and around the NFL, but it was crazy. He got that freak injury. But, yeah, I remember that, and it was like, whoa, that was a heck of a play. And like you said, I think that's what you're looking for, and I think that's why Coach Tomlin kind of says, don't get enamored with every throw. But, when you see something, okay, it's good to note that, but it's not going to change the fate of everything because, like you said, he caught their eyes and he still didn't change on the depth chart.
Now, we've seen some wow out here so far, not a ton of it, but everybody has had their moments and had their mistakes. Not even in pads yet. This is the fourth day without them. As we see, that this is a standard part of the
punt juggling
ramp-up process to practice here. The punt returners try to catch as many as they can. I think 5 so far is the record for this camp. A couple guys, Gunnar Olszewski was trying to get to 6 yesterday, couldn't do it, and one of the other returners. But when these quarterbacks are out here, do you think they're thinking, let the thing play out, or do you think they're thinking, I got to make a wow play? Because a couple of them have said, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett have said, we're going to let the process play out. And Mason Rudolph has said, I want to be near perfect on everything I do.
I think there's merit to both of them, but I think when you look at it, it's going to be the totality of work, right? The process has to play out. Okay.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. It is so awesome to be back in this environment, to see Steeler Nation as we work to be the team that we all want to be this year. Man, we got a league initiative. It's called Back Together Saturday. And we just wanted to take a pause, not only as the Pittsburgh Steelers, but as members of the National Football League, man, to thank all of you that put so much energy and passion into supporting us. Man, you are a driving force for us. Hopefully we entertain you today and get better, make a few plays, have some fun. Man, we got some former Steelers back. How about my man Heath Miller in the building today? Number 83, Heath Miller. Man, we're going to go to work, man. We love you. Have fun today. Thank you.
That was, of course, head coach Mike Tomlin, who had planned to address the crowd today, and we weren't quite sure exactly when that was going to take place. And he kind of sprang that one on us, Max. He interrupted your expert analysis on something. I forgot what you were talking about.
Exactly. So did I. I mean, I was so enamored with, because as a former player, like you hear Coach Tomlin speak, you just shut up immediately. You're just like, okay, what's Coach got to say? I need to hear what he's saying. But, no, I was just talking about the process with the quarterbacks, right? I mean, there's merit to both of them. You understand where Mason Rudolph is in his career, right? You've had 4 years here, and you haven't had an opportunity to really compete for a starting job. This is the first time it's been relinquished that there's an opening. So for him, it's a lot more onus on him because he's been here. But you look at Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett was a fan last year of the Steelers, and you look at Mr. Trubisky. He was on his second team, so they have a different perspective coming into here. They don't necessarily understand what the Steeler way is or the tradition that we've created. So it has its merits, but I'm more so on the side of I want you to put your best foot forward at all times and then let it play out, if that makes any sense.
Let's pivot for a second back to Heath Miller, part of the Hall of Honor class that was announced today, just a short while ago, by the Steelers. Heath Miller, Myron Cope, Ray Matthews, and Sam Davis headed into the Hall of Honor. And you heard the reactions to Mike Tomlin doing the Heath and the fans doing the Heath, and that hasn't gone away, even though he has. Talk a little bit about your former teammate and a guy that, to me, as genuine as they come, he was in it to play and to win. He wasn't in it to make a lot of noise and get himself noticed and talk to the media. He was always kind of dumbfounded that we even ever wanted to talk to him because he never had much to say. But, boy, what a presence he was during his time here.
I would say one of probably my most dependable teammates throughout my tenure. I knew that when Heath came in the year after me, came in 2005, and he made an immediate impact when he got here, paired with him and Jeremy Tooman at the tight end position. And I knew I was in good hands when I saw number 83 lined up to my outside, because I knew if we had a triple team, we called it a triple block double team, I knew I was in good hands, because I knew Heath was either going to shove the guy on me, or if I moved the guy onto him and climbed to the second level, Heath was going to handle him. A very strong dude, like you said, not a man of many words. I mean, I would probably equate it as many words as you just heard from Heath, which were 0. That's about how many words he would say, during practice outside of making a play call. But you're right, ever dependable, ever present, but always there when you needed that play to be made, even when tight ends weren't the emphasis. It's not today's NFL, right, where tight ends are looked at like really big slot receivers, or they're getting ISO'd on the outside. He was an inline blocking tight end that also had great hands, and that's something you don't see as much in this league, because they always want to create a mismatch. But Heath was the definition of a true all-around tight end, and I'm so happy for my teammate to get that honor, because I think it's a tremendous honor to go into, when you think about all the legends that have passed through this hallowed grounds here and also played in front of the Pittsburgh faithful, for him to be included in that class is pretty special.
Yeah, and he had about as much to say to you guys as he did us in the media, I guess, right? I mean,
yeah. Or he just smile at you with the blue eyes and just a big grin, and you're just like, so you're just not going to answer. Okay, cool.
Yeah, great day for him. You see Heath Miller and his family walking around on the field today. And I'll take another hard turn here and go off on another tangent, because we're wrapping up the first week at camp. And Heath Miller back, obviously, for the Hall of Honor presentation. But we've seen Ike Taylor here.
Yeah.
We've seen Jeff Hardings here. Kevin Colbert was back on campus yesterday. Kendrell Bell.
KB.
The alumni like to come back as well as the fans.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I think Aaron Smith was even here as well.
Aaron Smith, that's another one. Thanks for remembering.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at Charlie walk around right across over our shoulder. Charlie bashes around. I mean, it's something is special because, not unlike a lot of places where the trend has now been to move more training camps to these expensive buildings and training facilities attached to those buildings. This is one that's a time-honored tradition. I mean, you're thinking 54 years in a row before COVID interrupts that. And then you're back here now for a 55th season. It's not a lot of places like that, and the tradition that's held behind it. I mean, you could probably say like the Green Bays of the world and maybe a couple of other places, but it's something about this being an encompassing Western PA tradition that you come to Latrobe if you're a Pittsburgh Steeler, you go through training camp to earn the right to play in what is now Acrisure Stadium. I'm still trying to get used to not saying Heinz Field, but that's just a special thing, and the fans relate to it. They love the drive. They know how to get here, and they enjoy watching this process of a bunch of men out there on the field becoming a team.
And we've heard that a lot this week up here from a lot of different people, becoming a team, bonding, chemistry. And Mike Tomlin has talked about this often in his tenure. One of the things he perceives to be valuable about this environment is guys may go out after a meeting and sit on the steps out back behind the dorm and maybe smoke a cigar and talk about whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be the film they just watched, but how's your kids doing, or how you handling this? Yeah. Did you feel and experience and benefit from that over the years?
Absolutely. When you look at our teams were built off of the relationships we made here with guys, because you get the rooming list and you don't get to pick your roommates your first couple of years that you're here, so you don't know who you're going to end up with. I mean, I ended up with, Nathaniel Adibi, an outside linebacker, my rookie year. I ended up with Alonzo Jackson my sophomore year, or my second year in the league. I was a sophomore. And then I had like Grayling Love. So you're forced to interact with everybody, whereas I think the last couple of years, because training camp's at a stadium and you go home, you don't even go to a common place. You're up here, you're isolated from the rest of your normalities of life, so you're forced to interact with guys. You're forced to talk to guys or figure out who has the Xbox in their room so you can go play some Madden or play a video game, Call of Duty or something, and you're having those conversations on the steps, or you're walking over to lunch and dinner together. It's a forced bonding that creates a bond that later in the year you're going to be like, okay, I know this guy. I've been around this guy, and for better or for worse, some of their habits, because the quickest way to get into an argument out here, outside of on the field, is whoever forgets to switch out the toilet paper in the shared bathroom. That is a big deal. Don't leave you see it's brown. Don't just leave it there. Go get a new roll and put it on there.
You cannot miss that read.
No,
that's just
absolutely not.
Did you ever run into a Joe Green or a Bill Nunn or a figure such as that just kind of hanging out?
Oh, so my rookie year, I'll never forget. I'm on the sidelines, and I'm watching the starters on a drill, and you feel like this looming individual just kind of walk over your shoulders. Not quite a shadow because I'm pretty tall, but you feel this presence, and I just remember turning around like, oh, Mr. Green, how are you? And go out to shake him, and he just looks at me, grabs my hand, looks at my hand, and says, maybe you had a shot, and then just walked off. I was like, holy crap. I was like, that's mean Joe Green. And
did it mean maybe you had a shot at blocking him?
Blocking him on one play.
Yeah.
No, not for a series, not for a game. One play. Said maybe you had, and it was all based off my hand size. That was it. And then he just walked off. So, yeah, knowing him, but also, I mean, Bill Nunn was tremendous because I had a good relationship with the scouts, and I still do. But I just remember just going and just sitting and talking to Mr. Nunn, just asking him stories, about just, going and scouting these guys and how you had to get there before airplanes were a popular thing, and just hearing the stories and the history. It was truly like talking to a living encyclopedia of football. It was amazing.
And I love the way he'd tell a story, too, because at least he did this with me. I imagine he did it with most people, but he would stop in the middle. He'd be going on about something, and then he would come back to what he had been talking about initially and say, now, what did I say about that fullback?
Yeah.
He said, well, he was a good receiver, but he was kind of slow. And he wanted to see if you were paying attention.
Exactly, like a
because
good teacher.
If you weren't following, then he didn't have time because if you don't want to listen, why is he wasting his time? But the look he would get in his eye, he's following along. Now I can keep going and really deliver a zinger here or a life lesson.
And he loves telling stories. He loves sharing, which I think –
had a few to tell, too.
Yeah, and he's had some tremendous experiences. So, I appreciated so much what he had to offer and also what he meant to the history of this game and evolutionizing this game by going into HBCUs and finding that talent, and then those guys being on display in an NFL that was in its origin, trying to create itself. He was one of those guys that you look to and you say, okay, this was a guy who had a significant contribution to the NFL that we know today.
We're going to look at the wide receivers here as they work through the wide receiver sweep drill.
There we go.
And
sweep the play, Danielson. Sweep the play.
This position is in a little bit of a transition.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of heard about what their ideology is behind this position now is to not really have guys defined by specific roles, right? Your traditional X receiver, your Z receiver, or your slots. They're saying we want to be flexible enough to play everybody everywhere, and you can't get a read on them, which I think is smart. But also, you look at it, you still don't really have, your big guy, Chase Claypool, who's a guy who we have on the screen.
He's got a bucket hat there.
He does have a bucket hat. I need one of those bucket hats. And so, he's out there trying to get guys, but that's the guy who usually runs that. Him, Juju from the slot. Now you're trying to see what the faster guys can do to make up for that loss of like Ray McLeod types and Juju Smith-Schuster to see what guys can do and what they can really, I think, bring to the table to create more versatility within the offense.
James Washington, another guy who was here last year but isn't here this year. But, Max, they went about finding some new pass catchers. And, number 14, I don't know, it looks like we got the running backs group on camera now. Yeah. But George Pickens, second-round pick, there he is. Second round in designation, but first round in expectation, and so far living up to expectations. I know you've got some history with him, having covered the SEC as much as you have.
Yeah, George Pickens was a guy that when you looked at the success of Georgia over the last couple of years, he was the chief reason the air game was in place, was to combat what he was able to offer, right? And especially when you consider the SEC, you think of the Alabamas of the world, and Georgia kind of making that press and that push to contend with them. George Pickens was one of those guys that you looked at like, okay, in Georgia, like if we're going to win, it's going to be because of George Pickens and company and what that wide receiving core is. My little cousin, Jermaine Burton Jr. was his teammate last year when they won a national championship. He's since moved on. But George Pickens, I mean, he raved about just his work ethic. Now, he was injured a lot last year and the year before.
Almost the entire year.
Yeah. And
which is why he ended up in the second round, I think, and not the first.
Yeah, why he wasn't talked up with all those other receivers coming out of Ohio State and company. But he has an elite skill set. He's a fast, long, rangy receiver who has great ball identification in the air. I think that's something that when you look at it, we've always looked at Chase Claypool being that one that's your deep ball threat guy, the one that can run fast. Well, now you have a complement to Chase, so now you can hopefully take that pressure off of him. And I think by switching all these positions, and when you get George Pickens in the mix, now you can't really ID and take off one half of the field with a cover corner. That cover corner either has to travel, play in the slot sometime, or you have to make a decision of picking your poison. So if George Pickens continues to stay healthy and continues to grow and progress, I think this could be a really big year for him, but also help Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson and company with the passing attack.
Yeah, just to kind of catch everybody up on the backstory, he suffered a knee injury in the spring.
Yeah.
And only played, I believe, 4 games for Georgia.
Right at the end of the year.
Right at the end of the season. 2 of them were against Alabama, one in the SEC title game and the other one in the national championship game. And if I'm remembering this right, Max, he caught one pass in the national championship game, but it was a deep ball down the middle, and he had to dive and extend to catch it, and then he had the instinct or the understanding to twist his body before he hit the ground so he didn't land on the ball and have it bounce away.
Up.
And we've seen that body control as well out here so far in the early going of training camp, in addition to the other attributes you mentioned. He made a play yesterday. It was an out route, and Trubisky threw it up and out, and he went up and got it, came down, stayed in bounds, was able to turn up the field, and then start meandering through a defense, which wasn't tackling him yet. But
yeah.
I got to tell you, this looked like one of those plays where they weren't going to tackle him. Now, sometimes you see a guy break through and think, okay, everybody goes crazy in the stands because he's running fast and the ball goes a long way down the field, but it would have been a 3-yard gain. If they were. This looked like a legit big play, and he's made a couple of those. And Mitch Trubisky talked about him this morning. He said he's turning heads.
Well, and that's what you need, right? When we think about the passing game last year, you know, there was the ups and the downs with it, guys not being consistent with catching the ball, a lot of drops at certain points. So to now add a new guy into this mix and a guy that comes accomplished, that has a resume, has played against top talent because he's in the SEC. So for him to come out here and, like you said, turn heads, make the routine plays look spectacular, that's what you do to catch the coach's attention. And then obviously we'll see as we get into the preseason. But I think right now for the first impression, it was good pickup, good value in the second round so far.
Great value in the second round. And we're going to get a look at another guy that has made an impression, Calvin Austin III. He is number 19 in your program, and a little guy, but a fast guy.
Polly pocket size.
And we've seen some stop and start out of him. We have seen some acceleration, 0 to 60 pretty quick.
Yeah, it gives you Antoine Randall vibes. I can't give him the full-on Antoine Randall because L was a former quarterback and threw a touchdown in a Super Bowl. So I can't give him that yet. But I'll say it gives you those type of vibes when you watch him play. The short area quickness, the ability to stop, go, change direction. I mean, it's like he's got rubber band in his knees, the way that he moves. But this is somebody, you talk about X factors, right? A guy who can get lost in a defense and then pop up out of nowhere because you took it for granted. Where you thought he was a second ago is obviously 10 yards away from where he is now. And that's what you want to have. And when we're thinking about that slot position, I mean, how it's transformed and evolutionized in the NFL, slots are now guys that are volume guys. So if he can stay healthy, even though he's a little bit slight, if he can stay healthy, he has an opportunity to really make some big splashes and take pressure off of those bigger outside receivers in Pickens and Claypool if he gets paired in a three-wide situation.
And, of course, one of the reasons that we're seeing as much of these guys as we are, you get a look at Deontay Johnson there briefly, number 18, doing some individual stuff and some work out here, but not as yet participating in 11-on-11 play. This is becoming a trend, at least it is around here. T.J. Watt did it last year in training camp, awaiting a contract extension. Minka Fitzpatrick did it in the spring for OTAs. Awaiting his contract extension. Now Deontay Johnson hoping it's his turn. Here's what Mike Tomlin had to say about that this week.
we'll continue to manage the circumstance. But right now, my energy and focus is on those that are participating. And I think that's the appropriate mindset to have. From time to time, you get in a setting like this, you manage situations and circumstances and people. But largely, my energy is devoted to those that are working and in the larger body, and that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, he's not too worried about it. Cam Hayward said it's not impacting the team at all. Just kind of the way business operates now. But Deontay Johnson, a guy that, boy, you throw him into that mix, and that all of a sudden that position, Chase Claypool dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury suffered yesterday, but you can see some potential there, some physical ability.
Well, I mean, when you think of what Deontay brings and what Deontay did last year, I mean, he was a guy that was probably the one bright spot of consistency with this squad. So you're right. You add him in with Chase, with George Pickens, with Calvin Austin III, Gunnar Olszewski, Miles Boyd, all these guys that are coming in and competing. I mean, this makes for a very healthy competition at the wide receiving core where you're going to have a lot of guys for a very few number of hats. And it's one of those things you want to see that, right? You want to get this talent out there and competing because you hope that it breeds the best out of everyone.
Hey, speaking of hats, the Steelers Pro Shop item of the day, Max, is the New Era Steelers camo hat.
That's right. Look, snazzy. There we go.
See that?
There
it's
we
got the
go.
logo. You wear one of these, nobody will be able to see you.
Exactly.
Even a guy your size, you'll be
only if you're colorblind because there is yellow in that, but that's kind of the opposite of camo.
That's the pro item of the day, the New Era Steelers camo hat. You can scan the QR code on the screen to shop the item of the day. We'll have one of those for you each and every day. That's why we call it the item of the day.
Okay.
Inside linebacker's been a pretty interesting position out here as well. The Steelers went out and got Miles Jack in the veteran free agency. They're hoping for a continued bounce back from Devin Bush. But Robert Spillane, a guy who has appeared a lot in recent seasons, and he won't go away, Max.
No.
Keeps showing up. And I'll just give you an example how they did this yesterday. During 7 shots, the two starting inside linebackers were Spillane and Jack. During 7-on-7, the two starting inside linebackers were Devin Bush and Spillane. During the last team period of the day, the two starting inside linebackers were Jack and Bush. 3 working into 2, but I guess better to have too many than not enough.
Yeah, and I think last year was kind of indicative of that because you had Devin Bush, you had Robert Spillane, you had the sudden retirement of Vince Williams. A void left. You go and you get Joe Sherbert after, what was that, the second preseason game in Philly? They make the announcement, and you're trying to integrate guys. So at least you go into camp having 3 healthy bodies and trying to see how this rotation is going to look. I mean, who's going to get the green dot, I think, is the biggest question between all 3 of them. But I think if Devin Bush continues to distance himself from that previous knee injury and he continues to show that fearlessness that he had his rookie year when he had 100-plus tackles, I think that's what you hope to get to because we know what Miles Jack is. He's a known, proven commodity. Jacksonville's in a full rebuild, so they give up a 100-plus tackling guy like they did with Schobert the year before. But at least he's coming in and integrating into the defense a lot faster to really make this competition really good. But, I mean, think about this. If you could show up with a linebacking core, Alex Highsmith, T.J. Watt, Miles Jack, and Devin Bush, whew, I mean, that just on paper and physical appearance, that's an intimidating crew to put out there on the field. Now it's up to Devin Bush to show that, hey, I've overcome this injury, and now I'm back to being my old self. Now that I've had another year under my belt. But also, we have a fail-safe policy in Robert Spillane. We know what he can do.
We do this thing largely to.
So. Yeah, I think we were having a.
We might have had a false start there, but we do have Mike Tomlin echoing your sentiment.
We do this thing largely to give everybody an opportunity to be ready and show what they're capable of, and divide the labor up and so forth. And so when we got a lot of guys at a position, sometimes we'll work a pair and a spare in the first group in an effort to see more guys like Buddy Johnson, for instance. We do it at corner with Spoon and Levi and Cam Sutton. You work those guys exclusively in Group 1, so you get more of an opportunity to see JP in Group 2. So it's not necessarily about the 3 guys that are working in Group 1. Sometimes you're just thinning the herd to make sure that the guys in the 2nd and 3rd group aren't sharing reps because they got a lot to learn and a lot to show us, and the more opportunities they get are significant. And so I think it probably represents that. Him working with that first group, we have exposure to him. We know what he's capable of, and those others that you mentioned, more than anything, it thins the herd so Buddy Johnson and Mark Robinson and guys like that can learn and show what they're capable of.
Yeah, good stuff from Mike Tomlin. We're going to see and hear more of that throughout training camp here at St. Vincent College, and we're going to be here every day to bring it to you. Max, off and running. Good job.
Hey, listen, I am excited to be here and excited for the opportunity, and I can't wait to get into what our next show will probably be together, which will be after pads. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Ready for. Well, I'm not ready for pads. I'm ready to watch other people put pads on.
No, we're not hitting. That's why we're up here behind a desk up in the crow's nest here, but we're here to watch other people do combat, so I'm excited.
I want to remind everybody, check back in. We'll have the wrap-up show presented by UPMC Health Plan. That is following practice today. Our plan is to get a player from the field immediately after the session ends, and then Craig Wolfley and I will break down what we see here this afternoon today at St. Vincent College. For Max Starks, I'm Mike Pursuta. This has been Training Camp Live presented by FedEx. Thanks for finding us here on Steelers.com.